everybody. Welcome to the Subby Podcast. I think I got to say it right before we go any further. This is actually the second attempt. We were nearly all the way through it, and my computer decided to give up. So second attempt, probably be even better than the first. Fingers crossed. But as you know, Subby's back, health and wealth, and to kick it off, we're going to do one on health. And I'm joined today by Kate Walker. Kate has been working in the health and wellbeing industry for the past 22 years. And she's now transferring all of her expertise, all of her knowledge to the education and support and making people aware about diabetes, okay? So there is a big focus from Kate on the guys on site. So there is not a better place for Kate to be than on this podcast. So welcome, Kate. Great to have you here. Tell us a bit.
Yeah, thank you, James. And thank you all for letting me be here and rattle on and be able to be heard. I think it's a great platform, and I'm excited to be able to share what I'm passionate about and doing. And really just trying to increase the awareness, James, of understanding around diabetes. I think it's one we probably know somebody, we've all heard about it, it comes up in the press, it's been out there with COVID, it's not stopping. And I just don't think that we really understand its impact. And it's trying to speak to people like everyone here that, don't get picked up by the NHS, don't necessarily know the symptoms, don't necessarily understand it. And I think that's the real part that I'm passionate about, is how do we get the message out? So just as a starting point, there's 700 people a day diagnosed with diabetes in the UK. The numbers are staggering. 4.6 million people have it in the UK. And I think one of the scary facts for me is there's over 1 million who are undiagnosed. And the difficulty with that is the longer it's left, the worse the complications get and the less that can be done. So for me, how do we get the awareness out there and the understanding to get more people healthy and well and away from the horrific complications?
So you've obviously got, as you said, the 700. Then you said 1 million that is believed. That's obviously what is that statistic that we're kind of at the NHS or whoever's aware of that get missed. How are they getting missed? Because I know we touched on this in version 1, so let's do it again. Because I think this is really important, because it's something that I've actually gone through quite recently, where I seem to be very tired, and doctors just say, "Well, you're doing too much of this, or you're doing too much exercise, or whatever." So you say, but I think we're on this where things are getting brushed under the carpet.
Yeah, really are. I think there's a lot of reasons. If you're the only breadwinner, I do think, and I talk to senior managers and organisations, I don't think they understand enough about diabetes. And I've certainly spoken to lots of lads on construction sites. There's a misunderstanding. If I get diabetes, will I lose my job? Am I still allowed to drive? I tell you what, I won't go and get diagnosed, or I won't go. There's a real fear, and I absolutely respect that. But just for me, this really matters. You cannot lose your job. There's no blanket bans in the UK. And you don't lose driving licence. And I think that's really important. But I think as well, the symptoms, it's going to the toilet a lot, it's tiredness, it's been thirsty. But as you said, of course, I had a couple of pints last night. Of course, I'm thirsty today. Then I go to the toilet. I'm tired because I get home. I then have to do all my chores, or the nagging lovely lady makes me do, or whatever that looks like. The symptoms get very easily brushed under the carpet. Then trying to get a doctor's appointment on top of that, James, or trying to be seen and taken seriously. And then they go, "Oh, you'll be fine." How often we miss health checks. You can get health checks when you're at certain ages. I just think everything gets missed. The symptoms are too mild. And then we find in particular, and I apologise, gentlemen, but particularly with you men, we're seeing you're seeing you 5 to 10 years after you've had the condition with the complications. And that I find is just not okay, that more could be done. Yeah,
listen, I'll put my hands up. It takes a serious amount of badgering from my wife before I go anywhere near a doctor's surgery, let alone call a doctor to make an appointment. And you're right, it's a male thing. I think it's a bit of male pride, I suppose. I don't need a doctor, I don't get ill. But it's very, very good points. So tell us, there's obviously type 1 and type 2. So tell us a bit more about type 1 and type 2.
Sure. So type 1, so we talked about the 4.6 million in the UK who have it, just to kind of get a handle on how that split is. Only 5% are type 1s.
Okay.
And it's an autoimmune. Their pancreas, that's the organ that makes the insulin to kind of regulate sugar. Yeah. That fully shuts down.
Wow.
So they have to fully inject their insulin and regulate. So if they say eat X amount of chips, they'd have to work out how many carbohydrates are in that, and then they'd have to put the insulin in and regulate it themselves. So it's quite a lot of work.
Right.
And I think you told me earlier your uncle's got a little sensor. Is that right, James?
Yeah, we would. This is another thing. You see, I know very little about it. He's my uncle, but as I said to you earlier, that he's now got the kind of built-in, I don't know, call it a patch, where he can tap his mobile phone, his iPhone on there, and it lets him know exactly what he needs and what he's got to eat or how he does it.
Yeah.
But that's what I don't understand. So I don't know, what can we use? Let's use the bag of chips as an example. Have you then got to, so if you eat the bag of chips, you've then got to get the insulin to regulate what your body can't do, essentially.
Okay, so I'm going to use a cookie. So I would be eating one if I was allowed, but I don't feel I can eat cookies whilst talking about diabetes.
Yeah.
So diabetes in its simplest form, and this will touch on type 2, but we'll answer your question first. So diabetes is when your body can't regulate sugar. So if I ate a cookie now, or a big chocolate chip, let's get excited about that. I'll have one when we come off. If we had that now, my blood sugars would naturally rise, as would anybody's. I don't have diabetes, so my body would then produce insulin and then pull the blood sugar levels back down again. Okay, gotcha. And the reason that's so important, I used the analogy before, if you had a glass of sugary water and dropped a dull coin in, some lad told me it would sink. It definitely would.
Definitely would.
But it would also shine the coin. So inside us, if we've got too higher blood sugars, what it starts to do is not shine us because we're not a robot, but it would start to damage the body. It erodes or eats away or just starts to eat and damage our inside for eyes. And we'll talk complications, I'm sure, shortly. Yeah. So it's really important that our body can control its blood sugars to keep it safe. So with type 1s, the body doesn't produce any insulin, so it all has to be done outside. So if your uncle has that cookie, he needs to work out how much sugar's in there so he can put the right amount of insulin in to compensate for that.
Okay, right, I understand. Okay, I get it now. Right, so that's why, so when he comes to say have a bit of lunch or whatever, he'll check and then after he's eaten and go that way. Okay, I see. Okay, and how does that, so go into a bit more about type 2 then. So we've got type 1, so let's go into type 2 now.
Just very quickly for techies, what's really cool and where the technologies is going is when you swipe your phone and these sensors. So a lot of type 1s have got pumps, so they have it on their outside of their body and it regulates the insulin. Eventually, the sensor's going to talk to the pump, so it'll all be done for them, so they don't have to do it, which for kids is amazing, just from a techie point of view.
And I obviously I imagine that for someone dealing with that, it's a constant. We're not talking about just having when you have a certain meal. You're talking about you put one thing into your body, food, drink, whatever. You've got to do something, right?
Yeah.
So if that's doing it, you get a bit more freedom back.
Yeah, because it's not just food. The heat makes the insulin work. So in a hot summer's day, for someone with type 1, their insulin could work faster. So what they did yesterday and they ate exactly the same won't react the same today. So it's a really complex condition for people with type 1s. Okay.
So with type 2, because this is interesting, how you said about the heat with the sun. Type 2, is that more just sugary and that kind of, or can you get that effect from the sun, the heat as well with type 2?
Sure. So with type 2, I think the easiest analogy for us kind of to try and understand it. Yeah. So I'm in Birmingham. I'm going to be very un-PC about women for a moment. So any women listening, I apologise. But for men, you'll probably love my analogy. I get in my car and
we don't condone this. Just quickly, this is Kate doing this.
Terms and conditions apply here, James.
I know. I'm just whoa, this is going to go wrong. No, go on, Kate. I trust you.
Okay, good. It's about female driving. It's not too bad. So imagine that I'm in Birmingham. Well, I am in Birmingham. I drive down to London in first gear. That's where my PC-ness was going. I was given a quick terms and conditions apply. But I drive down to Birmingham. No one, I'm sure, on here would be surprised that my car engine would be smoking. They'd be going, look, love, change gear. So if I change gear and drive home, hopefully my car engine isn't too bad and I don't get nailed by the better half and the car's fine, probably don't even confess to it. But if I keep driving in first gear, at some point my engine is definitely going to go and break. So if we use that analogy for our pancreas, so the pancreas is that organ, remember, that produces the insulin. So pre-diabetes is that first little bit of smoke, the body going, hey, look, I'm starting to be overused, change gear, unload me a little bit, let me make this a bit easier. If you keep beating that pancreas up, at some point, it's going to say, I can't do this anymore. And at that point, we tip into type 2 diabetes. And at that point, if it's caught early enough, you might just need to change your lifestyle. You might need to just take a low medication and just have a bit of support. You can, if you catch it early enough, can reverse it and come out of it, because basically you take the car back in, change the gears, and it works again. Same with the pancreas. However, if you've tipped in and you keep driving for another 10 years, 5 years in first gear, your pancreas gets worse and worse. Complications happen. We can't reverse it. And that's when the problems start. And then with type 2 diabetes, as your body can do less, you need more support from medicines, right up to the point that type 2s can end up on insulin. They're not type 1s, it's still a different system, but they can end up on insulin.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting because I've actually, as I said, my wife has plagued me so much, I finally caved, and I went for a doctor's appointment. When did I go? 2 days ago. So this again, like we've spoken about earlier, said about being a little tired on random days. You know, I drink, I exercise maybe 6 times a week. So it started to get, well, maybe you just got to take a rest for a bit and And it was only that my mother, she had, I think, an underactive thyroid. Anyway, so I managed to force the issue, and I got blood test in 2 weeks' time. So you are right; these kind of symptoms are essentially right. They're everyday kind of life symptoms. Maybe being tired. I went for a curry last night with my dad. I had 2 beers. So naturally, I'm thirsty today. So they are, right? You can look this massively just because they're everyday life symptoms. But I think what's going to stop people from overlooking it is talking about some of the symptoms. Now, just to clarify, we have spoken about it before. Not me talking about it to Kate as if it's my problem. I'm fine, but that we were going to talk about it on this podcast. So let's start with the feet and toes, and we'll work towards the next bit. All right, Kate?
All right, well, drop in gently, James. I like the prelude. I did mine on the female bit. You've dropped yours in for this bit. I love it. Oh,
dear.
So, yeah, the complications are the real concerns for diabetes. And again, that's where my passion comes out. Let's do something before. Let's get to people who can hear us and hear podcasts like this in different ways than some, nurse preaching to us. I couldn't find my word. So feet-wise, so we talked about that sugar damage in the inside. What happens is if we've got blood sugar staying high, it starts to erode or damage the nerves. And feet are obviously further away from the body. They'll start first. If you've got a cut on your foot and you've got high blood sugars, the body's no longer able to heal it. So what happens from what could be a small cut starts to kind of eat itself away. It won't heal. It goes horrible. Please, type in diabetic foot if you don't believe me. They're not something to do before tea or on a squeamish stomach. They're really rancid pictures.
So I have. Do it after you've eaten.
Yeah.
Definitely do it after you're eating. Well, okay, so essentially the type 2, it slows the body, or if not stops the body from healing in kind of easy way of explaining it.
170 amputations a week, James, in the UK.
How many?
170, and it's rising because of COVID, because we haven't seen people present soon enough, but 170 amputations a week in the UK from diabetes.
It's incredible. I mean, you mentioned earlier on version 1 of this podcast that we'll get to the charity in a minute, but one of the older guys you look after, just tell us that again.
Bless him. And he wouldn't mind. He does like to share stories. Bless him, Dave does. But yeah, we run this charity, and as James said, we'll share it shortly. But he turned up to one of our face-to-face groups before COVID, and he doesn't always keep himself the cleanest. And I like to just help him out. Come on, let's have a shower. It's not that, Kate, this time. It's like, well, it smells pretty ropey. And he said, no, I've had a cut. He cut his leg basically in the garden, quite a gash on his leg, because he doesn't manage his diabetes well. He likes his white floured bread. it hadn't started to heal to the point that the NHS still use maggots to clean the cut. And needless to say, the rancid smell was his flesh and the maggots were in his leg cleaning it out. He has healed. It is healed finally. But I mean, it took months, if not a year, for it to properly heal.
Essentially, it's got to be done from outsourced medicine or treatment. The body cannot do it at all. Oh, wow. It's incredible. It really is. So let's get on to symptom number 2. And lads, when you're listening to this, honestly, hear what Kate's got to say. Kate, the floor is yours. The floor is yours.
I do love this chat. And lads, you'll start to appreciate if I turn up, I'm a 5'11", turn up in the tin shed with the lads and have this conversation. They come in, cup of tea, I don't really want to listen to you, love. Don't listen. 75% of men suffer from erectile dysfunction. It's blue pills if you don't listen to me. Suddenly I've got quite the floor and they're quite interested in me. And the conversation to which unfolds, again, James, I think you can imagine they try to get me and embarrass me. And the stories I've heard are quite impressive.
I can imagine.
One lad said to me, I've had a blue pill. And I was like, right, on your own or with a lad? Oh, no, with a woman. And he went on to say it took 45 minutes to work. I mean, I have no idea. He told me it took 45 minutes to work. And there's a bloke in the corner going, oh, love, you best get talking. 5 minutes with my missus is more than enough. Oh. And so you start this conversation, but 75% of men, James, who have diabetes suffer erectile dysfunction at some point. Manhood doesn't work. And I think, that's not okay. We know how important it is. We know, but it gives me a floor to talk to people to say, look, listen to me, please. I care. I'm not that nagging woman. I'm trying to say, and we'll show you some really simple steps afterwards, but, this is something that we can manage and be prevented.
Yeah. Do you know what, though? It's interesting. I'm just thinking, if you flip it the other way, right? So you said 75% of men suffer from erectile dysfunction. But how many, when you go the other way, so it's like on TalkSport Radio, they advertise, also a massive shout out for TalkSport Radio on a huge podcast like this. But they advertise, there's a company on there that advertise for the erectile dysfunction. But how many men are going there just thinking, well, I've just got erectile dysfunction? They don't know they could be type 2 diabetic, do they?
No. And again, this is it.
Another thing where it gets missed.
Yeah. But it's people turning up. We find, and I do apologise, men, I am not here to bash you. I am on your side. I don't think you're heard enough, the NHS, and I apologise, NHS, but they say, men don't turn up. I'm like, well, why aren't we going? And that's why I ended up doing this. Why aren't we going out talking to where you are? You work long hours. It's not easy. You don't get that opportunity to get to an appointment. If you do it 7 minutes, why are we not sharing this information in a way that it can be heard? And that's the bit that I get really passionate about. But as you say, we see people, particularly men, turning up. Worst case scenario, heart failure, because it's a huge cause of that, but blindness, feet problems, erectile dysfunction problems, none of which is put down. But, these conversations, if nothing else, maybe lads, 10 of you go and get assessments after this and we'll tell you how to. And that stops you getting it or helps you before. I've done my job and no one else is reaching out in this way, and it really frustrates me.
Yeah, because you sent me over, I meant to bring it. I wanted to do the test today, ready for the podcast, but I actually forgot to bring it with me. Was the tester, wasn't it, that you sent me? Do you want to just say a little bit about that? Because what I will do is I'll do it tomorrow. Then when we post the podcast, I'll post my results as well. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so kind of there's 2 ways you can get tested. So you can go to the GP. Good luck getting appointments at the moment, but if you can, and I'm really pleased, if you need it and you think from this podcast, fight to get your appointment. It is so important. And they'll take what's cleverly termed the Hba1c test. Why, I don't know. But they take blood from your arm, proper blood test, and they work out how much sugar's been attached for the last 3 months. And that would start to give them an indication of whether you're at risk or where your levels are. That's a true test.
Right.
The other way, if you're struggling to do that or you're not ready to do that, and I absolutely respect that because there's a lot of fear around this, there's a lot of things, and I'd say we'll share the charity if you want to talk more to us. But you can get, and as James was just saying, a blood testing kit. You can buy them at home and you take the sample from your finger. Okay. So you have to be brave, stab yourself, take a little bit of blood.
Oh, crikey.
I tell you what, I don't matter how many times I do it, you wait to put the needle inside the top of that diving board. But a little bit of blood, and it is only a tiny stab, lads, it's all right. And it'll tell you the blood sugar in that moment. Please hear this bit. Do not do it if you've eaten sugar. Do not do it if you've got sugar on your finger, and do not do it after food. The best way to check would be first thing in the morning when you've not eaten, because that's going to be a true reading of your blood sugars, and you need to do several. If you had a curry with your dad last night and 2 pints, it's going to be different than if you ate vegetables and chicken with your good lady. You know, you take a few and take an average. That blood is what's in your blood at that moment. That is not a true example like the one you'd have at GP, but it can give you an indication of whether you need to get an appointment. So I think it's quite a nice helping step for many people.
And in fairness, it would probably actually, like I said, when I had to force the issue using my mum to get the next blood, to get my blood test booked in, is essentially you could do this on your own terms.
Yeah.
5 to 7 times, let's say. And you can go with some ammunition, say, I want a proper blood test because I've got this and I want a proper. So it's actually a really good way of doing it effectively, isn't it, really?
Definitely. And again, we know that we good ladies like to nag. We care. Yeah. And that's half the problem. But actually also then you can go, look, I've done this test. It's absolutely fine. You can do it together or however that looks. And it just makes it all a bit easier.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's great. So, okay, Do you want to tell us a bit more about the charity, or should we get into the 1 day or less challenge?
I don't mind which way around you do it, James.
Charity. Let's hear about the charity, and then we'll go on to the challenge after.
Yeah, so I do 2 roles. So my company side is going in and trying to get top managers to buy into what we're doing and put this across companies. So if you're in a company and you think you've got an interested boss, please write to James and let me know, because I'll come in and talk. Because I want to help more people on the ground. And the only way we can do that is stuff like this and come from above. And the other arm, which I think is far more important here, is the charity. It's called Cuppa Squad because it's basically over a cup of tea or coffee. We're online. And we meet every month at a set time for people to drop in. We're going to start some men-only groups because I think that's really important. We have enough women-only groups that we can have that place to come and talk about diabetes, whether you think you've got it, whether it's an obesity conversation, whether you're just worried, whether you just want a place to talk, whether you have it and you want to share. It's really once a month, over an hour to 2, just a place for people to talk. It's fully free. It's completely independent.
Doing that online at the moment, or are you doing it face-to-face? How are you doing those meetings?
Yeah, so we're online at the moment. We were face-to-face, although we've been online's allowed us to reach more. It also means that we actually get more interest so far from certain areas because they don't have to turn up. Long term, we'd like to get back face to face. And part of my fight against my board is that we do it in pubs, but that's becoming hard. But one of the things we're struggling with coming back face to face is there is a greater risk around diabetes with COVID. So we've got to be a bit careful of that. But online is where we're at the moment. And if you want to join, it's free. And James will hand out the details, I'm sure, at the end of this.
Everything after this, the post and online and everything social will have all the links available. I think the online is actually a really good way of doing it. I did a webinar on mental health a couple of weeks ago with the CIOB. And it's amazing that when people come in anonymously to watch the webinar, guaranteed they're the people that ask questions. Because no one knows who they are. They've got they're safe, you know what I mean, to ask away. It's a shame because some of them ask really, really good questions, and you kind of went, I want that conversation to go on a bit further, but it does work. So as I said, we'll share the links, and I'll definitely get involved with that as well, and see if we can bring along some of the lads to that. Okay, so let's hear more about the challenge, because I'm going to have to definitely take up some sort of challenge here. So. You tell us more about the 1 day or less challenge.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the things I've found, is once you've been told, have I got diabetes? Have I not? I should probably do something even if I haven't. And then you think, and I've been told on construction sites, I'm not having a gay salad, love, the lads will pick on me. And I'm like, cucumber, tomato was gay. They're like, I don't know. Yeah. Like, put more salad in your sandwich. And we go through scenarios. Like, it dawned on me, and I recognise that, 95% of weight loss clubs have the return rate to weight loss clubs is 95%. I'm going to shout out that is not working. If you're not going back 95%, we haven't got results. So how do we get around this problem? Maybe I have diabetes. Maybe I just need to make a better choice. So we've come up with the 1 less challenge.
Yeah.
So, and then I sat, because I've clearly got no life, working out what 1 less looked like. So if you have one less spoonful of sugar in your coffee or tea, 6 cups a day is a kilogram less of sugar a month. That's 12 bags of sugar less a year.
Right. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And if everybody did something like that, by the end of the year, is the body healthier? Unconditionally, 10 years later, 120 bags of sugar is going to make the difference everybody needs to do. And whether that's pints, and I said it on one side, one less pint a night, and this woman who come in with a lads, like, I'll have it in the morning. Not quite the point.
Good idea. I mean, not very great before work, but good idea. I see where it's
Yeah, I did have a chat with the boss because I think she was serious and I was listening to her. But in terms of one less pint, and that's not every night, but if we had 2 pints less a week, 2 less pints a week, 52 weeks a year, that's 104 pints less. And we're not saying don't have it, but what would those one lessers be? Bag of crisps, one less biscuit. If you have 3 biscuits, one a day, that's a packet to maybe 2 packets a month.
Yeah, so I was doing, when obviously you sent me some stuff over about the challenge, and I think it's great. I'm trying to pick at something that I could do. But one thing that I did do, my wife does everything really in the house that I end up doing. So we did a deal. My wife went vegan, which is a no-go for me. It's not going to happen. So I agreed that full fat cans of Coke would not come into the house, and we replaced them with Coke Zero, because there's no sugar. Now, a lot of people go, oh, well, there's other stuff in it, there's other rubbish. I don't know for sure. But one thing I did find out I was having to dig around about the difference between Coke Zero and Diet Coke and da-da-da-da. And the only reason, not the only reason, but the main outlying factor that Coke released Coke Zero was because men refused to drink Diet Coke because they girly. So it's so much of what you're saying is true, right? So if you think now, I don't think the taste is that much different. So if you have a can of Coke a day, have a can of Coke Zero a day. I don't know if I'm fully all right to say that, but it's zero sugar, right? Or have I got that wrong?
No, you've got the sugar right. But on that point, the Pepsi Max was designed for men. Do you remember? And Yorkie bars are for you men. I love marketing.
There you go.
It's amazing. Marketing is just clever. And it goes, and I love it when it says it's all natural. I'm like, cocaine's natural. I'm not going to advocate it. I think marketing has got the most clever, people go, oh, you've eaten this, it's natural. I'm thinking, oh, please, let's be careful.
But
I think we need to be really careful.
Could that be an example with a full fat can of Coke and Coke Zero?
Oh, I don't know whether you want to open that can of worms, James. Do you want me to go for that answer?
Have we got enough time? I don't know. Is this going to... Go on, quickly. Prove me wrong.
So when they take out the sugar, they do add other chemicals. And one of the sweetening chemicals, particularly aspartames, firstly, from a chemical point of view, they turn to neurotoxins in the brain. They're pickling our brains, so not mine because I don't drink it. I would rather see full fat Coke and have one less for my children. If I was going, I don't give them either, but that's because I'm a tight mummy. But they do eat Haribo because I like it. But, I think I would rather see the full fat than the Diet Coke. You are right from a sugar point of view. There is no sugar. Yeah. It's what is that chemical doing? And that's my uncertainty of what it's doing both at the brain, but equally one of the difficulties when and particularly I've looked into it for women's diet, when they have it actually causes you to want more sugar. And when you talked about you'd stop smoking, I don't know if this was this podcast or the previous podcast we tried.
It's about not smoking, yeah.
And you were going for sugar, but actually the Diet Coke, or the man's version of Diet Coke, could be causing you to crave sugar because it's had the sugar stripped out. Right. And they've put a chemical in, the body goes, that's sugar. Yeah. No, it's not. Go hunt, gather and find me some more sugar. And so there's real evidence to say that it can cause other problems. So is it a better fix? If you're diabetic, a Diet Coke potentially is better than a can of Coke. Neither is the ideal. But this is where I'm really not prescriptive. The question for me is saying, right, where are you today? What's the one thing you could do better? Not go change your life. Don't go do a diet. If you can and you're doing one, I applaud you. If you've done this 800-calorie Michael Mosley diet that drops your weight and you can reverse, I applaud and support. And as a charity, we support. So if you need any of that, But what's that thing you could change that would make a difference from where you are? And James, have you made a difference in sugar? Yes, of course you have.
Yeah. And I mean, I try desperately to just have one with dinner a day. That's one a day. Sometimes it's not one, it's two, maybe three. But I do try my best to be wary of it and say, in the day, I don't drink any coffee anymore or tea, and just drink water through the day. So I am mindful of it. But then again, I do like a cold can of Coke Zero with dinner.
One a day James, one a day over all the other choices. I think that's what we need to be careful of. Is that really the end of the world? Over drinking, 6 pints a night, or, having full fat Coke 4 cans a day. We've got to get a balance as well. And I think, if you're drinking water all day, it's reasonable.
Yeah, and I think trying as the podcast's going on is thinking of a way to summarise the podcast, and in effect, you've just done it there. It's not screaming at someone saying you've got to give up everything that you like, because essentially, that, like I said to anyone, being on a healthy diet means you've got to cut out all the nice chocolatey, fatty, fun foods, right? So it's not saying that. It's about saying, well, if you have 4 cans of Coke a day, try and have 3 or try and have 2, and just doing some simple little bits like that. So I think it's a good way to conclude, definitely. Kate, great having you here.
Thank you
so much for taking the time twice today to do this podcast. And I'm going to share all the links, how you can get in contact with Kate. They'll be going out on the website and on social media. So thank you very much, Kate. Take care, and really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me, James, and for everyone listening. I really appreciate it.
Cheers. Thanks.